Is Stagecoach a great Western, or is it a tired old hat from an overworked genre? Find out today on Really Old Movies. Welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host Harrison Scullin, and today I'll be discussing the John Ford classic Stagecoach from 1939. Some essential movie details. This was the first time John Ford would shoot a film in Monuments Valley, up in Arizona, and this is a staple of his subsequent westerns, as well as into the memories of many western fans around the world. Many other westerns started filming here as well. This is also the film that made John Wayne a megastar. Before, he was just a supporting character. This is his first major role, and it turned him into a leading man. So the basic plot for Stagecoach: a group of people, including a prostitute, a doctor, a U.S. Marshal, a whiskey salesman, a pregnant mother, a banker, and a former Confederate soldier, they're all riding together from Arizona towards Lordsburg, New Mexico, for different reasons, but they're all in the same stagecoach. They're warned that Apache Indians are in the area and to look out for them, including their leader Geronimo. On their way, they bring aboard the Ringo Kid, played by John Wayne, who had recently got out of prison to avenge the death of his brother and his father, who were both murdered in Lordsburg. All hope to reach there before Geronimo and his Indians kill them all. So now we'll get into my actual review. The plot, I gave a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's a good, pretty simple story. I just wish we got to see more of Geronimo and more of the shootout between Ringo and the Plumber Boys near the end of the film. And honestly, it's pretty anticlimactic that we don't actually get to see if Ringo gets out or not. But I understand what they were trying to do. They were wanting us to think he lost, even having the main plumber boy walking into the bar and then falls over with gun wounds in his back. So I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to make us feel, tension and suspension. Like, did he die? I don't know. So I get what they're trying to do. I just wish we got to actually see it. Now, in regards to acting, I give it a 5 out of 5. I thought it was great. I loved how the characters got along, and also when they didn't get along, it felt pretty realistic. How many times in life are we on a plane and want to get off because of crazy, passengers, or because it's uncomfortable sitting so long in the same position? I can't imagine being in a stagecoach like that tight of quarters for so long as they would have done. It's just absolutely crazy. But overall, all great actors, great cast. I loved it. Now, in regards to directing, I give it 3 out of 5. John Ford did pretty good here, though I do think some of these scenes could have been cut down a bit. Such as when they're at the first house in the desert, they only stay there for a few hours to change horses, and then they continue onward. Honestly, that entire sequence could have been cut out because there's an almost identical one later on when they find the Spanish villa. It's almost identical to that. They could have cut it out altogether, but that's just me. That's what I would have done. I do love seeing the stagecoach in the desert. I really do. But there's like 6 or 7 nearly identical shots. And honestly, they could have cut out half of them. And they felt like they were trying to kill time with that. It didn't feel really necessary, which is sad. I would have liked to see more of the characters, not as much of the scenery, although it was beautiful scenery. Or even seeing the villains planning out their moves. That would have been interesting too, but we don't get that. So that's why I gave directing a 3 out of 5. Now, in regards to cinematography and special effects, I gave a 4 out of 5. It was okay. There were times you could tell they weren't on an actual stagecoach, that there was a rear projection screen behind them. But overall, they did some great stunt work actually outdoors, especially when the Indians, they were being shot, or how the horses, they were able to knock them down and flip them over. That was really cool. And there's even an instance where an Indian jumps onto the stagecoach, onto the horses, and then he gets shot and falls down. The guy actually falls down and crawls underneath the horses and the carriage. And it's just absolutely nuts how they were able to carry that, how they were able to pull off that insane stunt. And that even inspired, Raiders of the Lost Ark. in the 80s, right? Where Indy's crawling underneath the semi-truck. So yeah, that is an insane moment and crazy scene right there. A guy actually did that. Very impressive with that. In regards to music, I gave it 5 out of 5. I thought it was great music, especially in the scenes where the stagecoach is riding around Monument Valley. Even though I said I felt they could have cut it out, there were some instances where it was amazing and beautiful. The music gives a feeling of adventuring into the unknown. I really liked that. And it was very cinematic music, if you will. All right. So overall, that brings my final Letterboxd score to a 4.1 out of 5. I thought this is a great movie, but I did like it a bit less the second time around. The first time I watched it was in a film history class. I think the first time I watched it, I was super ecstatic because the movie featured Lordsburg, one of the cities I was in on my mission for my church. So I was just super excited the fact that a movie even talked about Lordsburg, which I felt was, middle of nowhere. Nobody talked about. But so I think that kind of blinded me my first time watching it. I was just so amazed by that. There were some flaws, but for the most part, I really enjoy it and I really like it. The characters, I think, are what make it for me. I think they're the best part of it. And would I recommend it? Absolutely. I think this is a great Western. Not because of having tons of shootouts and, all of that like you normally see. There are a couple, but again, it's the characters and their interactions with one another. I could kind of see that John Hughes may have taken notes from this in the movie Breakfast Club. Because all these people, they don't seem like they would have gotten along outside of this situation. They seem like kind of outcasts, outsiders. They're strung together in a situation they have no control over. But they're still able to make it through crazy trials together. But once they actually make it to town, they kind of part their separate ways. They don't get back together again ever. I highly doubt that. So, yeah, I like that. I highly recommend it. All right, well, those are my thoughts and feelings on Stagecoach from 1939. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure to subscribe to our Instagram and Facebook at Really Old Movies, where I discuss behind-the-scenes details on the week's particular film. New episodes will be released now on Saturdays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. All right, well, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. This has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. Take care.